All right, Jason McCourty is here, a winner at the NFL level, a great analyst, a brother, a twin brother. His brother was on the show earlier and had one of the most watched clips of the season this year when he talked about Bill Belichick and his win patterns. We have a culture of competition. Jason's got to beat that. I don't know what the final viewership numbers were, but whatever it is, Jason McCourty's got to beat it. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, just hanging out, getting ready for some football leading up to the Super Bowl. Now you put a lot of pressure on me because everything I do, I beat Devin, so I got to continue that streak.
So here's the deal. I say this all the time, but I remember Michael Bennett and Chris Long talking about this, about how Belichick didn't rule through fear, he ruled through expectations, right? So when I say you've got to beat Devin's clip, that's not me trying to scare you. It's me trying to set expectations that you have to meet. I feel like I might be the Belichick of the content game. That's all I'm trying to say.
I didn't know what I was walking
Yeah,
into, but just from this clip, now my level is just
yeah,
gone up a ton right there. When you put
yeah.
yourself in that same conversation as Bill Belichick,
Many
like
people
now you
do.
got to show up.
Yeah, many people do. No, I want to start here. Speaking of Belichick, you played against Patrick Mahomes in some big games, AFC title games, regular season games. I think you played him 4 times. Going through the game log here last night. Take me through something I don't know about how Mahomes manipulates the defense.
I think it goes without saying, but a lot of people skip over his intelligence when
Yeah,
it comes to the football side of things. You watched that game last night. The Bills come out and they play zone coverage on that first drive. And on the RPO game, the ball gets out of his hands extremely fast. And you see later in the game, he gets out and he's breaking contain and he's getting outside the pocket of realizing it's just a 4-man rush and they don't have anybody out there. And when we would go against them, you go back to that AFC
yeah,
Championship game, we went in and we put an entirely different defense in with different DBs on the field, a package. One was called Army when they would come out in 12 personnel. The other one was Navy when they would come out in 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers on the field. So it was something they had never seen. And in that first half, we completely shut them down. And then in the second half, he comes out and they start throwing the ball to the running backs and doing different things to now make us uncomfortable. That was the side of Mahomes that I think we kind of took for granted because of his scrambling ability and kind of the wow plays, but it was a down in and down out, just consistent plays that he would make.
you see him. I used to have a joke that was barely a joke. I said a rookie quarterback doesn't become a veteran until he plays Bill Belichick because of the way he would, as you said, throw the kitchen sink at them. Of course, the packages are called Army and Navy. Like, of course, it's Bill Belichick. But the way he would just make a quarterback mature, or just drum him out of the league, like
Yeah.
Sam Darnold seeing ghosts, it set him back 3 years.
Yep.
How did you see in real time? You see it on tape, but then you see it in person. Like when you see it in person and he's improvising and all of that stuff, what was that first experience of going against Patrick Mahomes like? I mean, obviously you're in a great defense with great coaches, but like you got to, at some point you got to be like, holy crap! It's like seeing the locomotive for the first time. You're like, what the hell is this? Like, take me through the first time you see it when the bullets are flying.
Dude, we played them in 2018 and they put up 40 points on us. And we got out there and you're going against that offense and it just felt like an onslaught. No matter what you did, they would continue to come at you. And that was the prime year, that
Yeah,
2018, the 15
yeah,
touchdown passes, all of that. Tyreek Hill, Watkins on up. There was just so many guys and it was hard to match up. And I remember going into that game and that was the first time you felt like, damn, like we really didn't have answers
yeah,
where obviously they had Tyreek Hill. So we had some things we were doing in the field. And we're like, you know what? When we get in the red zone, they're equal. Like the
yeah.
speed is no longer a thing because now the field is shrunk. And they started putting Tyreek Hill in the slot, and we wouldn't match up corners on him. So you end up on a safety. And they started putting him at number 2 or 3 and just running him across the field, running away from our safeties. And I remember looking at my brother Dev when Tyreek scored a touchdown on him, and we kind of looked at each other like, damn, that entire game plan we did all week, Andy Reid just laughed in our face as he put him in this spot, and he just ran by safeties time after time. So just that was the first time, and then you fast forward to I remember we played them in 2020 in the
Yeah.
COVID year, and it was a completely different style game where it was close, it was low scoring, and he still found ways to win. And I think that was the biggest difference, where whether it was a high powered offense or a mistake free offense, they still found ways to come out on top.
All right, other side of this one, Vic Fangio, a remade Eagles secondary. Just take me through what you see there, because I mean, I think you look at Fangio, he wins everywhere he goes except Miami, I guess. But
Yeah.
it just felt like a home run hire at the time. I mean, if you're going to hire a bunch of Fangio impersonators throughout the league, you might as well hire Vic Fangio. But then he immediately has an impact. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. Quinyon Mitchell did a great job on Terry McLaren. A lot of press coverage, a lot of stuff. A bunch of stats came out last night. But just take me through what you noticed out of this Eagles defense and how they changed the franchise.
It's funny. I had their last game of the season. I'm
Yeah,
talking to Slay down on the field during walkthrough. I'm like, "What's up with Fangio?" I said, "Because I spoke to guys in Miami a year ago, and they couldn't get him out of the building fast enough. Didn't like him at all." And I'm like, "It seems like you guys love him." And he was like, "Man, Vic is the man." He said, "The one thing is, guys, you get in front of them, and some guys aren't used to having someone tell them exactly what it is." He was like, "But the part of it that you don't realize is." Once you get past all of that and you raise to the expectations to what you said early on, because he expects perfect and he's not going to allow you to fall short of that. They said he was in the meetings by the end of the season. Josh Sweat sack celebration, he's mimicking it. The Cooper DeJean doing this after the play. Vic Fangio is doing those things in meetings. But as you watch their defense and the evolution of it, when you get a guy like Quinyon Mitchell, you now don't have to move Darius Slay within the defense at all. So now when you talk about disguising coverages and making the quarterback have to figure it out post snap, now you can show the same thing and feel good about it. After the bye week, Cooper DeJean
yeah,
goes in and he now starts playing in a nickel. Now you can cover guys on the inside. Now you can blitz Cooper DeJean. How he comes up and makes tackles in the run game, it changes everything. And I think obviously Zach Bond, how well he
yeah.
has played. And he said when he got there in the summer, they moved him to off the ball linebacker. He's in the middle of the defense. He went to Vic Fangio and was like, "Man, I don't know if this is working out. Like, I'm an edge player
Mhm.
because it wasn't pretty early on, but they stuck with it." And then you see the way he has played, forcing a fumble and just play after play.
Is there a matchup in the Super Bowl that you're watching that you're just saying, okay, this is going to determine the game in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I would say early on, I'm looking at Jalen Carter on the inside
Yeah.
and then Caliendo, who's replaced
Yep.
Joe Tooney as Tooney slid out to that left tackle spot. I mean, there was a play the past game,
Yep.
the AFC Championship
Jordan
game,
Phillips.
where Jordan Phillips just walks him back to Mahomes. We watched Jalen Carter just jump over a guy this past game. So that matchup in the interior of him being able to possibly get pressure and them just trying to equalize him is going to be a big one early on that I'm looking forward to.
So you made one of the coolest plays. I've been to double digit Super Bowls. I don't know how many at this point, but watching you break up that pass that Jared Goff had, Brandon Cooks over the middle, wide open. I think the stat was, according to Next Gen Stats, you were 19.7 yards away and you were able to track it down. And just seeing that develop is one of the coolest things from the press box. You kind of, Lord knows the press boxes are high enough to where you got a cool angle of that stuff. You know it now, how high those boxes can be.
Yeah.
But take me through that and how it developed in your eyes and how you were able to make up that ground, frankly.
That's the fun part I think that I miss most about playing in the league is the things that go on the sideline and the conversations and the chess match that goes on throughout the course of a game. Going into that Super Bowl, we have played man to man from the second half of the season all the way through because we figured out our corners were the strength of our defense. We got to the Super Bowl and we knew the way McVay ran his offense, it would be impossible to have success to play man to man, playing and play out. So we changed up our game plan. And in the first quarter, they ran that same exact play. And I remember we're sitting there on the surface on the sideline, and Dev leans over to me and we're looking at it. And he's like, "If they run this play from the backside, you got to get there for the post." And I'm looking at him like, "Dude, I know. Me and Steph have already talked about it." Like, and that was in that team that year in 2018. I remember I was one of the older guys there.
Yeah.
When we came off the sideline, our corners coach was up in the box. So a lot of times we'd get to surface and we'd go through it as players after the coaches showed it to us, and we'd go, "Hey guys, they're coming back to us, blah blah blah." So in the third quarter, when they come back to that play, we had already talked about it on the sideline in the first half. So it was something that we were expecting. Now, Gilly drops his guy on it because he sees something coming off that wasn't supposed to happen. But that's to me the nuanced part of it. When you're that clued in as a defense or as a team, you can make up and kind of erase some of the mistakes that guys make. So, I mean, you think about for me personally, that was my 10th year in the
Yeah.
NFL. I had never made the playoffs, and to get into the Super Bowl and to be able to make a play of that magnitude to help dictate the
Amazing.
game, I mean, it was a surreal feeling.
You mentioned obviously a level of preparation that is elite. And it was funny because I talked to Rodney Harrison a couple years ago for a story I was doing on the Wildcat, and he said the Wildcat game was the only time, and you mentioned the Mahomes thing, but it was the only time when he played for Belichick that not only were they not prepared, but they weren't many levels over prepared. Normally, Belichick gives
Mm,
you 8 layers of things you're never going to need. Can you give me an
yep.
example of preparation that Bill Belichick would give you that nobody else would give you? Something where you're just like, how could I ever think of that? Now, Devin gave us the win thing, but like it could be a football thing, it could be a tendency thing. Like, what was Belichick preparing you with that was just unbelievable?
I would say going into that Super Bowl, there was a funny moment the night before the game or the walkthrough, our last practice. We're out there on the field, and this something the Rams would do is they would rush to the line
Yeah,
and after a big play, and you wouldn't be able to get lined up because the receivers were switch sides, and they would do a lot of different things. So we started preparing for it, and I remember we're going through it and walk through, and somebody makes a mistake, and we finish up, and Bill calls me and Dev over, and we come in, and he's like, fellas, when they run that, we got to get everybody lined up. And I'm telling you right now, if we come back and somebody makes a mistake, I'm looking at you two and though you're the only two I'm cursing out. And I thought that was the cool thing for me, where I had never been in a
yeah,
system like that, where Bill put the onus on certain guys to get everybody else lined up. You mentioned a guy like Rodney
yeah,
Harrison. He was probably a guy that had the responsibility in those Super Bowl runs and those teams that were so good where, hey, I know this guy is going to F it up. But if he does, I'm blaming you because you got to be the guy that corrects it all. So it was those small things throughout the course of a game or preparation leading up to a
yeah.
game that he always had you thinking of.
That's incredible. You mentioned Devin with the play, and you guys kind of talking about it. You guys overlapped obviously in New England. You overlapped at Rutgers. We obviously are Omaha Productions. We're run by Eli and Peyton. They've got a great relationship. You guys have a great relationship. But playing next to a guy is a different deal. Like Eli and Peyton weren't able to be in the backfield together. Okay, they weren't even on the same team. Did you guys at some point, was there like a mind reading? Like, was there a moment where you're just like, man, like my brother understands the way I play. I understand the way he plays. Like, take me through what it's like to play against someone, with someone you're so close with, and especially when you're in the defensive backfield, where that's a communication
Yeah.
type position.
Well, the one thing you always talk about New England defensively, they're going to take away your best players. And a lot of that when it came to wide receivers was double teaming
Yeah,
guys. And the 3 years I was there in New England, whenever there was a double team that had to be placed, me and Dev always did the double team. And a lot of that had to do with being on, to your point, being on the same page, unspoken things that just naturally happen. And it got to a point where obviously Gilmore was on our team at that point, and whoever the best receiver was, he was following him. We played the Green Bay Packers. He has Devontae Adams. If we call a double team, double 17, Gilmore will look at me and be like, all right, you go get him. You and Dev double him. I'll go find somebody else to guard, because we had that kind of way about us. I remember we were guarding Thielen. We were playing
yeah,
Minnesota at home, and he hits us with a stutter goal, and we both able to figure the play, and we kind of look at each other and laugh because it was a tough one to cover. And it goes back to, there were moments, and this goes all the way back to high school, of playing alongside your brother. We
yeah,
got along great, but me and him would be nose to nose arguing because the expectation that we had for one another was through the roof. So high school basketball games, our coach would have to tell us to shut the hell up just so he could coach the team. Fast forward to I get to New England, Dev's in his ninth year, I'm in his 10th, and he's Mr. Patriot. He can
yeah.
do no wrong. So whatever he was saying in the meeting, strategy wise or anything, it would be what we would do. And I would stand up and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like there's better ways to do it. And me and him would argue all the time on the field, in the meeting rooms, of trying to get the best out of each other. And I think that kind of circulates throughout the room when you have your old guys in the room challenging one another of trying to get the most and the best out of each other.
I love that. I love that. The brotherly communication, but also the squabbles. That's
Oh
amazing
yeah.
stuff. I love that. What's the biggest fight you guys ever got into on a football field?
Oh, it would be an off season at Rutgers. We would do our summer training, and this is 90 degrees, it's hot as heck. And there was one day, there's two of them. There was one day in college where I didn't think he was going hard enough, and we got into a full. It stopped the whole workout because we got into we're face to
Yeah,
face wanting to fight. And then fast forward, this is probably the best one. He goes to the Pro Bowl his rookie year. He has an outstanding year,
Yep.
7 interceptions. He comes in and he's the next great, blah, blah, blah. So that offseason, we're back at school, we're back at Rutgers, and we're training. And we're doing pull ups or something. And he does 6 pull ups, and we were supposed to do 8. So he gets his 6, he gets down. I'm like, you cheated me 2 reps. Like, you're not gonna finish those reps. And he looks at me, he goes, you think those 2 reps are gonna get you to the Pro Bowl? And I'm sitting there, I'm
No.
like, really? So we go at it right there in the weight room. And then his second year in the league, he is awful. You look up the numbers, he's given up the most yards for corners, starting this, blah. And I remember we laughed about it that going into that next offseason, because now it's, as an athlete, it's just like, all right, now I got to get back to the drawing board. I'm like, I bet you did them 2 damn pull-ups now when you're out there getting scorched. So it's been a lot of ups and downs.
Oh man, I love that. Only brothers. Only brothers can say that
Yep.
to each other. Absolutely.
Yep.
Have coaches ever been frustrated about not being able to tell you guys apart?
All the time. Our college coach Shiano used to call us twin because he couldn't tell us apart. When we first got to New England in training camp, we would wear the same color sleeves every day at practice. Because one day Bill said something about it. Because he would just call us Dev when I first got there. I think he just was so used to only having one McCourt, so he would just go Dev. And he made a comment about us wearing the same sleeves that one day we just did it by coincidence, that every single day in training camp from that point on, we wore the same sleeves just to try. And he'd curse us out every day about it, and we'd just sit there and laugh.
I love that. I love that. All right, you played for the Titans for a long time. What should they do with the first overall pick? How do we fix the Titans here a little bit because they need a little bit of help? I think. By the way, I think Brian Callahan is a really good coach. The GM they just hired from Kansas City, don't know him,
Yep.
but he gets rave reviews from the people that I know around that program. So it seems like they've got the building blocks in place. First overall pick. Let's help the Titans.
I would love for them to possibly, and you've already heard them, Binger said it, that we're looking for a generational talent. And I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the draft and the quarterbacks coming out, but from what everyone says, when you look at Cam Ward, you look at Shador Sanders, that they're 2 really good quarterbacks. But a guy like Travis Hunter is the guy you
Yeah.
want to get in the draft. So to me, with the first pick, if you're the Titans, get the best player available, and that's Travis Hunter. Trade possibly out of that first pick of a team that feels like they absolutely have to come up and draft, whether it's Shador, whether it's Cam, and maybe move back a slot or two, and you can get a guy like Travis Hunter and get more picks and try to build around. Now, if you think one of those 2 quarterbacks is a generational
Yeah.
talent and they're the guy to come in and take over and beat out Will Levis and lead this team, then go for it. But if not, to me, I think it's about getting as many good players in that locker room as possible.
And to me, there's enough franchises that will want to move up, like the Giants, like the Raiders, who just want a quarterback to solve their problems. And
Yep.
so maybe you just prey on the desperation there. I would go again. I went to Miami, so maybe I'm just biased. I would go Cam Ward, number one
Cam.
overall, but there's a lot of different routes you can take there. I would just take Cam and call it a day, but
Hmm.
exploring every option is what a good front office does. And so hopefully
Yep.
they're able to do that. All right. Badasses. It's whoever you say goes on the board back here. Most badass person you've ever played with, any level of football. Just, the way I define it when people are confused is an alien comes down, says, take me to a football player. Who you taking him to?
When you say any level, Miles Garrett was my NFL one in 2017 when he was our first overall pick in Cleveland. As soon as he walked on the field and he did a get off drill, me and our other corner, Jamar Taylor, looked at each other and we were like, oh, we got a player. Like, we got a chance in the secondary. Now, obviously, we
Yeah.
didn't win a single game, so it didn't matter. I'm going to go in high school. My high school was rivals with Brian Cushing's high school. I went to St. Joe's, he went to Bergen
We just
Catholic.
had who just had Cushing on this like 2 weeks ago. I forget who it was. So go ahead.
So we played Kush in the game, end of the season, rival game around Thanksgiving. He has 5 touchdowns against us. He had, I think, a pick six, a kickoff return for a touchdown. He threw a touchdown pass. He ran one in, and I think he caught one. We finished that game, and I remember when we were at Rutgers, they were still playing that game on like the local channel back home. And I promise you, USC, if they were on the fence about giving him a scholarship, they watched that game and they were like, "Oh yeah, he's our guy." It was unbelievable the type of game he had. And then he was like a man amongst boys at that point. He was probably 230, 240 in high school. So he was a monster when we played against each other.
Is it true? Orlovsky, by the way, our producer just told us Orlovsky was the guy who put Brian Cushing in the Badasses as well. That's a great one. They'll
Oh
go up on
wow.
the board. Yeah. Is it true that speaking of recruiting, that your mom basically made Rutgers take you guys as a package deal? Is that true?
My mom, we went on our visit. She said, I'm bringing double trouble to the table. And one of my old teammates talks about that all the time. And yeah, she told Sheehan that if you want, I was more highly recruited than Dev, not by much, but she let him know that if you want one of them, then you damn sure better offer both of them. So, and Darren Rizzi, who now has been up for
Yeah.
head coaching interviews, took over. He's the guy that recruited us to Rutgers when we were coming out of high school. And Rizzi believed that we both were ready and should have gotten a scholarship. Shiano needed a little bit of convincing. And I remember I laughed with Rizzi 2 years ago about this, but he told Shiano, like, just offer both of them. We're going to be set. So as soon as they offered Deb, he said yes and he accepted the offer. I was deciding between Rutgers and BC, so I was unsure. So when they got the news that he accepted the offer and he committed, Shiano goes to Rizzi. We were trying to get the cow and we got the calf, and he was hot, went off. And you fast forward, I'm the 6th round draft pick. That was the first rounder with 3 rings to my one. So it worked out good for everybody, but they needed some convincing to offer both of us.
It all worked out. It all worked out.
It all worked out.
We have something called Rock Bottom Theater here, which is the worst game, season, whatever you've ever been a part of. You alluded to the 0-16 Browns earlier. I know it's a big question, but can you give me the worst moment of that year?
Oh my goodness. I actually have a notes section in my phone of like all the things that were happening that season. Me and Duke Johnson we would go through it and like something else would happen and we'd write it down and tick it off. Worst moment of that season, man, I would say, and I would say this was probably the worst one. I remember it was just whatever week it was, normal course of a week, a Wednesday or Thursday practice. And we all had, which a lot of teams do, like an app where everybody, you get the schedule, you can message people, a teamworks
Yeah.
app. And I remember we're finishing practice and some guys are in the weight room and all of that. And you get a notification on your phone and you look at it, it comes from Teamworks, and it says, we will be releasing so and so today to make room for whoever. And I'm assuming that this was supposed to go out to select
Oh
individuals,
my god.
not the entire team.
Oh
So
my
we're
god.
now sitting in a locker room, a group of us like, yo, he just got released, but he's working out in the weight room and he probably hasn't looked at his phone. Who's going to go tell him that, hey, we just got this message? And then finally we sat there, somebody went, pulled him aside and was just like, yo, we just saw this message. You may want to go find your position coach or GM and figure. And I'm sitting
Oh
there and I'm
my
just
god.
like, what are we doing? Like that, but that, and as a microcosm of when you have a year like the one we had,
Oh
it
my
doesn't
god.
just happen. Like there's a lot of buildup and a lot of things behind scenes that are not working properly.
It's the equivalent. It's the football equivalent of like you're in the office and someone sends an accidental reply all and with some information that doesn't need to get out there, except it
Exactly.
was a guy's livelihood was being
Exactly.
broadcast to 53 players.
Exactly.
That is
Couldn't believe it.
horrifying. That's like the
Yes.
worst.
Then that's just one tick on the mark on that notes section.
One day, when you write the book, I want to, you and Duke Johnson can write it together. Just publish the notes section.
Exactly. Yeah, it
All
was a
right.
hell of a year.
Jason McCourty will get you out on this Super Bowl prediction score, how it's won.
Oh man. I've been mulling back and forth on this one. I don't know who I'm choosing yet, but I think it's gonna be high scoring. I'm gonna say it's going to be 31 to 34, and I'm undecided on
All
which
right.
team I'm putting ahead.
We can get before the game. We'll update the listeners
We'll
on.
tap
I'll
back
find
in.
you somewhere in New Orleans. All right,
There we
buddy. We
go.
are not going to release Jason McCourty via Teamworks app. He was an amazing guest. Thanks, buddy.
Anytime. Appreciate you.